Medellin, Colombia, January 31st, 2025. A federal witness steps out of the Hotel Mirador. The pause before lighting his cigarette becomes his final moment. A motorcycle slips into frame, slow enough to look harmless, fast enough to close distance without warning. 3 seconds. Muzzle flashes. The witness folds to the pavement while traffic rolls on. CCTV catches only a sliver of the shooter's visor. No clear face, but a clear message. This wasn't cartel business. It was an order routed through encrypted phones tied to Montreal's underworld, and to a fugitive ex-Olympian carrying a $15 million reward. What investigators uncovered forced 2 countries to re-examine every assumption about who controls what, and why one man in Montreal felt confident enough to reach into another continent. Missed the button? Subscribe now, so you don't forget later. He was 40. But in Montreal's underworld, that number didn't describe age, it described reach. By early 2024, Atna Onha had become one of the fastest-growing figures in the city's criminal landscape, rising on a trajectory that drew attention from every faction. Law enforcement identifies him as the alleged leader of the Rat Pack mob, a crew that expanded beyond street-level disputes between late 2022 and 2023. But investigators consistently circle back to one precise moment, November 17, 2023, the night Greg Woolley was assassinated in Montreal. Woolley's death reshaped the city. He could speak to the Rizzuto organization, the Hells Angels, Arab Power, and street crews while maintaining neutrality. When news broke on November 18, 2023, investigators anticipated an immediate shift. That shift created openings that several groups attempted to exploit, including, investigators allege, the Rat Pack mob. Unlike Woolley, who forged alliances, Onha operated through pressure and disruption. His network tested boundaries through targeted intimidation, strategic violence, and moves aimed at increasing control over money-producing territories. This accelerated in early 2024. One area repeatedly flagged: the Port of Montreal. Investigators allege elements within Onha's network gained footholds around logistics channels tied to stolen vehicle exports and illicit goods movement. Any port access meant access to international routes. By mid-2024, intelligence indicated Montreal activity was intersecting with larger trafficking patterns. A multinational narcotics pipeline centered on former Olympic snowboarder Ryan Wedding, whose organization operated across Canada, the US, Mexico, and South America. Throughout late 2024, American agencies assembled the giant slalom case, tracking encrypted communications, money laundering channels, cryptocurrency movement, and cross-border distribution routes. The timeline became critical on January 31, 2025, when a federal witness tied to the case was murdered in Medellin. Weeks later, American prosecutors alleged the killing was meant to obstruct testimony, a statement that immediately interested Canadian authorities. When the U.S. unsealed Operation Giant Slalom indictments on November 19, 2025, the documentation named American and Canadian suspects. That same day, the FBI raised Wedding's reward to $15 million, marking him as one of North America's highest-value fugitives. For Onha, this created new exposure. The overlap between Montreal's disputes and the giant slalom network suggested someone in the city had both motive and capability to protect multinational operations. When the Medellin witness was killed, investigators began re-evaluating every Canadian name intersecting those channels. One question emerged: if the giant slalom network relied on eliminating vulnerabilities, who inside Montreal had the most to lose if the witness continued talking? Once investigators aligned the timelines, Woolley's assassination on November 17, 2023, the witness's murder on January 31, 2025, and the U.S. indictment on November 19, 2025, a pattern demanded scrutiny. A pattern suggesting the person they were watching wasn't just expanding locally, but operating inside a structure with reach far beyond the city. Who in Montreal believed they were positioned well enough to give an order that crossed continents? For nearly 15 years, Roughly 2008 through 2023, Montreal moved like a rotating battlefield. The Rizzuto Mafia's wars, the Hells Angels reconstruction, Arab powers rise. The West End gang's fading influence, and independent crews all pulled the city into constant recalibration. Through all that volatility, Greg Woolley acted as stabilizer. That stability ended November 17, 2023, when he was assassinated. The morning after, on November 18, 2023, outlets confirmed his death. What investigators noticed wasn't gradual change, it was a vacuum. One man reacted faster than anyone expected, Atna Onha. According to law enforcement, Onha didn't replicate Woolley's alliance building, he moved through disruption. If Woolley kept rivals talking, Onha kept them off balance. If Woolley built bridges, Onha quietly undermined them. Where Woolley used influence, Onha allegedly used momentum, rapid expansion, strategic intimidation, divide-and-conquer tactics that shifted allegiances. That strategy accelerated after Woolley's assassination. Mentors became adversaries. Groups balanced for years suddenly faced targeted pressure, firebombings, stepped-up extortion, disputes that weakened response capability. A pattern designed to fragment, not unify, and create openings no one looked for. By early 2024, Onha's alleged network wasn't just expanding sideways, it was expanding upward, into infrastructure connecting the city to other countries. Most concerning, the port of Montreal, where investigators allege his network gained footholds around export channels, tied to stolen vehicles and narcotics distribution. As the year progressed, those concerns intersected with a much larger investigation. American authorities tracked a suspected multinational trafficking system centered on Ryan Wedding. Wedding's operations stretched across Canada, the U.S., Mexico, and South America, relying on encrypted communications, crypto laundering, front companies, and cross-border nodes, allowing cocaine and methamphetamine to move with minimal visibility. Operation Giant Slalom intensified throughout 2024, mapping the structure country by country. The timeline broke on January 31, 2025, when a federal witness was murdered outside a Medellin hotel. Weeks later, American prosecutors alleged the killing was meant to obstruct testimony. When the U.S. unsealed Giant Slalom indictments on November 19, 2025, the filings listed American and Canadian suspects. That same day, the FBI increased Wedding's reward to $15 million. The paperwork identified Canadian intermediaries linked to distribution routes, enforcement roles, or financial channels. Canadian authorities reviewing intelligence found overlaps between Montreal networks and the Giant Slalom system. Among circulating names were individuals linked to the Rat Pack mob and figures who rose quickly after November 17, 2023. One question investigators couldn't ignore. If Giant Slalom depended on eliminating threats, who inside Montreal had both incentive and confidence to act? Who believed they could reach across borders to protect a multinational structure? And who stood to lose the most if a witness started talking? Then one piece changed everything. A witness started talking. By early 2024, Montreal was primed. Woolley's assassination removed the city's only stabilizer, and alliances he held together broke in every direction. As tensions rose, both the Hells Angels and Rizzuto elements reportedly considered contracts on Onha. Viewing his expansion as destabilizing, those threats didn't slow him, they accelerated him. By spring 2024, Onha had responded with pressure. Intelligence sources suggested he discussed targeting senior Rizzuto figures, including Leo Rizzuto and alleged associate Pete D'Adamo, though no indictment confirms operational steps. What investigators verify is the aftermath. A violent spike across Montreal. Fire bombings hit restaurants. Cigar lounges were shot at during closing. Nightclubs linked to rival groups experienced attempted extortion followed by retaliatory attacks. These incidents intensified after several leadership arrests in late 2023 and early 2024. Where gaps opened, Onha's network moved quickly, but local violence was only half the picture. While Montreal fractured, Operation Giant Slalom widened. American investigators tied encrypted channels to distribution networks spanning 4 countries. By January 2025, the FBI identified Canadian connections through crypto transfers, burner phone mapping, and vehicle export manifests tied to port entries. Canadian agencies, RCMP and Sûreté du Québec, began cross-referencing findings. Analysts compared cell tower triangulations between Montreal and South Florida, burner phone cycles near the port of Montreal, cryptocurrency movements linked to suspected laundering wallets, shipping documents tied to flagged containers, and vehicle export lists matching ongoing stolen vehicle investigations. Each layer supported the next. Each connection led to another name. Eventually, several lines pointed toward individuals linked to the Rat Pack mob. But one name stood out: Johnny Garcia, a Montreal trafficker with alleged ties to Weddings Network, had appeared in multiple U.S. narcotics files since 2020. He wasn't just a trafficker, he was a federal witness in an ongoing American case. By late 2024, investigators on both sides heard the same rumor: Garcia might be cooperating. So investigators built a timeline, a countdown no one recognized in real time. 6:42 p.m. A message leads Montreal, pinging a tower linked to an encrypted routing service. Destination: a Colombian contact connected to Medellin's underworld. 6:59 p.m. U.S. authorities' location tracker shows the federal witness arriving near Hotel Mirador. 7:01 p.m. Surveillance cameras flicker, the same malfunction recorded in later forensic reviews of the Medellin hit on January 31, 2025. Each timestamp felt ordinary until overlaid. Then the gaps disappeared: the message, the arrival, the blackout, and the fact that the man killed in Colombia had direct ties to the Giant Slalom case. Then came the theory, the one that changed the investigation. Someone inside Onha's own organization may have been feeding information to the killers. A theory investigators couldn't ignore. A theory that explained too much. Who inside Montreal knew exactly where the witness would be, and when? Quick reminder, if you're still watching, stay with me, because the next 10 seconds change the entire investigation. January 31, 2025. Medellin, Colombia. At 6:59 p.m., federal witness Johnny Garcia steps out of Hotel Mirador. He moves like a man who believes the worst is behind him. He adjusts his jacket, checks his phone, looks left, not knowing danger comes from the right. Then, the motorcycle enters frame. Quiet, controlled, too steady for coincidence. The passenger lifts his arm. A metallic shape rises. The streetlight catches the weapon's outline. At 7:03 p.m., the first muzzle flash explodes across the CCTV lens. Short, disciplined bursts. 9mm rounds. Garcia drops instantly. Pedestrians scatter, yet cars continue rolling almost indifferent. Colombian police arrive within minutes. Forensic teams recover brass casings. Lab technicians note extraction marks, consistent with weapons seen in earlier South American investigations, sharing patterns with firearms trafficked through Montreal-connected intermediaries. Not a smoking gun, but enough to make investigators wonder. Why did a Montreal signature appear 4,000 kilometers away? Then comes the most important clue. A damaged shop camera catches a single reflection on the shooter's visor. A curved tint. A visor angle. A pattern analysts later matched to helmets used by Colombian subcontractors tied to North American narcotics groups. Not a face, but a fingerprint made of glass. That fragment forces investigators to rethink the hit. Weeks later, the FBI issues its conclusion. This was not a cartel hit. It was an obstruction of justice murder carried out to protect a U.S. federal trafficking conspiracy. If true, who inside that conspiracy feared Garcia enough to eliminate him in another country? And why now? The FBI's confirmation triggers Phase 2 of Operation Giant Slalom. U.S. agents seize devices from suspects. Colombian authorities send forensic packets north. RCMP analysts pull encrypted communication bursts from late 2024 and compare them to movement logs around Montreal. The tempo shifts. Someone is running out of room. Then investigators access the seized phones. Buried in stored data is a routing pattern no one expected. A message sent hours before Garcia stepped out of the hotel, traced to an encrypted device tied to Montreal. Not days, not weeks, hours. Who in Montreal knew exactly when Garcia would walk through that door? And why were they communicating with Colombia moments before he died? What investigators found didn't just expand the case. It rewrote the theory of who orchestrated the killing and what it was meant to protect. The fallout begins the moment Medellin footage reaches North America. Investigators freeze the frame where the visor catches light, because that reflection is a doorway. When the FBI pulls at it, the first thread leads somewhere unexpected, an encrypted chat ping routed through Canada. Not vague, not hypothetical. A real digital burst with a timestamp lining up almost perfectly with the hit. Investigators trace the packet backward until one final relay point appears: Montreal. Buried inside that relay, according to DOJ filings, is a device associated with a known Rat Pack intermediary. If the message came from Montreal, who inside the city had authority to send it? While that question hangs, financial analysts run the next layer. Cryptocurrency transfers tied to the same encrypted accounts show patterns. Small amounts routed across exchanges in Europe and South America, then consolidated into wallets controlled by individuals investigators say have direct ties to Rat Pack financial channels. The U.S. Treasury flags the movements under cross-border laundering protocols. Digital signals, financial footprints, none proving guilt alone, but all pointing in a single direction. The agencies respond in unison. The FBI, RCMP, Sûreté du Québec, and DOJ activate a coordinated operation built during Giant Slalom's first phase. When raids begin, they hit all three countries at once. 10 suspects are arrested under the new U.S. federal indictment unsealed on November 19, 2025. That same day, the FBI increases Wedding's reward to $15 million, making him North America's highest reward fugitive outside terrorism cases. Canadian investigators move quickly. Search warrants are executed across Montreal and Laval. Apartments, safe houses, storage units, garages tied to stolen car operations. Officers seize encrypted phones, port documents, manifests from suspected export containers, and device fragments linked to encrypted messaging platforms known for cross-border narcotics coordination. When analysts place everything on the table, a clearer picture forms. Patterns emerge showing alleged financial overlap between Onha's network and individuals believed to have assisted the Medellin hit team. Movement logs suggest one of Onha's lieutenants may have communicated with a contact connected to Colombia in the hours before the murder. Other intelligence hints at internal fractures, someone inside the organization sending information outward. Investigators begin asking the question they had avoided. Was the betrayal coming from inside his own circle? As RCMP analysts map connections, another twist unsettles the theory. One lead suggests the Medellin hit may not have been meant for Garcia at all. Colombian investigators comparing witness accounts raise the possibility that the intended target was someone else. Someone Garcia met shortly before the shooting. A girlfriend setup rumor circulates in task force briefings. Another angle points to an informer double-cross. Every version leads to the same conclusion. The hit served more than one purpose. It protected a U.S. federal narcotics pipeline. It advanced gangland interests, and it exploited fractures inside Montreal's most volatile network. If true, someone benefited twice, once from Garcia's silence and once from the chaos that followed. Who gains the most from Onha's fall? And who was positioned to make sure it happened? The aftermath hits Montreal fast. RCMP units execute coordinated arrests after Giant Slalom indictments are unsealed on November 19, 2025. Among those taken into custody is Atna Tupac Onha. The figure investigators allege sits at the center of financial, digital, and strategic threads connecting Montreal to the Medellin execution. He's held on murder-related allegations tied to the obstruction killing of a U.S. federal witness, along with trafficking-related charges linked to cross-border narcotics movement. For the first time, investigators publicly acknowledge that extradition to the United States is on the table. If extradited, the charge connected to the Medellin murder could carry a life sentence under U.S. federal obstruction murder statutes. If prosecuted in Canada, first-degree murder carries life with no parole for 25 years. But legal risk isn't the only question. There are the fractures, the whispers, the things investigators can't yet prove, but can't ignore. Was Onha betrayed by someone inside his own crew? Was the encrypted routing leak the result of a lieutenant turning inward or a rival turning outward? If rivals tipped RCMP investigators, what did they expect in return? Favors? Territory? Survival? Then there's the question no one can fully answer. Did the Medellin murder actually hide something bigger? If Garcia wasn't the intended target? If the message was meant for someone else? If the timing was engineered to collapse Onha's support at the exact moment the giant slalom indictment dropped? Then who orchestrated the deeper play? And who stands to inherit the vacuum he leaves behind? Because with Onha removed, Montreal doesn't stabilize. It reopens. Every alliance Woolley once held together fractures further. Every rivalry that paused out of fear wakes back up. Every crew that moved quietly during Onha's rise now weighs whether to expand or retreat. Montreal becomes what it always becomes when one power disappears, a negotiation without rules. A city waiting for the next person willing to pay the price to hold it. And that price is the one constant investigators never see change. The underworld doesn't punish ambition, it punishes success. And in Montreal's shadows, the price of power is always paid in advance, long before the first bullet ever leaves the gun. You're still here? Do what you meant to do earlier. Subscribe. Hit the bell. More cases coming. Cases where the truth is darker than any fiction.